Last time, on Talora Tales, our heroes, our party, the Ember Four, set off from Messidore, escorting a caravan that is led by Lindis Carquin. Their ultimate goal is to, I guess, more or less lure out a goblin group or collection that has been harassing caravans moving up and down the main road. The desire was to have the goblins attack the caravan while the party was aware, fend them off, and execute them in fulfilling their contract, though one of our glorious members was distracted on watch, leaving the party vulnerable to an ambush of the exact goblins that they were trying to seek out and annihilate. Finding themselves on the back foot, our party is battered, beaten, and broken to the point where Braynoon and Quinn are left unconscious, Thomas being the only surviving member of the assault as the goblins flee off into the darkness. The wonderful and vibrant Svenjamin is seemingly missing at this point, our heroes having no real idea of why he is gone or where he is gone, just knowing that his distinct purple robe has been left at camp, and him and Lindis are nowhere to be found, even amongst the dead that now scatter the roadway. Thomas, as you had briefly ran off to the south and had dispatched a few of the goblins kind of harassing you before Braynoon made his final stand, you are coming back up the road just as you see Braynoon kind of swinging his hammer wide, sending the last 3 or 4 goblins that are trying to carry Quinn off, scattering, they scampering over the cobblestone and the gravel and off to the north and off to the east. You see Quinn is still unconscious on the ground, just kind of dropped where he was as the goblins throw their hands up. Braynoon is just aware enough to kind of leave that final swing, hold his position as he watches the goblins flee, and then glance back at this imposing, intimidating presence that you are imparting on the battlefield as you send the residing or residual goblins even further off from your almost demonic presence, and then Braynoon, perhaps due to Thomas's visceral imagery, collapse on the ground. It is probably only around maybe 9 or 10 at night or in the evening at this point as the battle comes to a conclusion. Thomas, you would come over to your 2 unconscious fellows and the many dead lingering the battlefield or previous battlefield around you. I guess what is Thomas's exact reaction as all this kind of calms down and you are first upon the scene?
So, a month and a half or 2 months ago when all this started, it would have been a little different. He's not as panicky as he would be prone to be, but he's realizes like he's all alone. So you'd see him kind of stop and just kind of assess the situation for a little bit, wondering if there's anywhere that he can go, and then realizing, well, moving both of them any distance is going to be problematic, and we could probably be tracked wherever we go. So I would decide on making them as comfortable as I could in their unconscious state, a little bit off the road, soft grass, whatever. Pile together some wood, create bonfire on it, have a fire going, and just work on keeping them as comfortable as possible. And I have Mr. Sparkles running kind of a circle around the perimeter and just have him come back and chatter at me if there's anything that I need to worry about. But otherwise, I'm going to just focus on stabilizing the 2 of them, getting a little bit of, like, I'm sure there's stuff in the wagon, so I'm going to get like a pot and start making a little bit of a broth-based type of soup or something, just something minimal to get in them, and just start caring for them. And assuming they just sleep through the night, I would probably wait until around midnight, 1 o'clock, and leave Mr. Sparkles on watch and just pass out.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and throw me Perception with advantage for Mr. Sparkles, and then go ahead and throw me a general medicine check for Thomas.
All right, natural 20 for Sparkles plus his, so that's like a 23.
Mm-hmm.
And medicine for me is a 12.
Okay. So as Sparkles is kind of going around in circles as you are making your preparations and moving your companions, he clearly kind of marks out in his mind, and again, we'll have to maybe delve a little bit into your connectivity with Sparkles and how well that translates, but he can find the distinct kind of rapid retreating, I don't know, like disturbances through the grasslands that the goblins had taken as they were fleeing the scene. Tons of like almost sprawling trails leading off of the road and into the glade in the distance. There is also a pair of tracks that he is somewhat confident is less hurried, a bit more careful. That potentially could be where Sven and maybe Lindis has gone, or at least some sort of hint in that direction, I suppose, though currently not acting upon it in the moment. The general distant sounds that Sparkles can pick up on, especially kind of right after the goblins have retreated, is scampering, screaming, shouting, slowly kind of drifting further and further away. But there would be enough context, I suppose, for Sparkles to understand that he is hearing more goblins than those that retreated. There is some other group or some other collection of them out there that are also making some sort of noise as they are retreating as well, which is just another bit of information, I suppose, that he would understand / pass along to Thomas, again, however the hell that works. As you find yourself kind of settling in, you look over your companions. Quinn looks like he basically got knocked unconscious by a rather powerful blow. There's a pretty sizable bruise on the side of his face, but there's no clear sign that he is actively dying or any sort of danger at the moment. Braynoon looks battered, but not wounded. It kind of looks as though he just fell from exhaustion or just the amount of adrenaline that he called upon to force himself through that second half of the encounter. He's just recovering or recuperating all of that kind of expent energy in a very deep and dark slumber. So you're fairly comfortable with finding your own way to sleep, especially leaving Sparkles on watch so that you can prepare for what is to come. I guess I would qualify that as a short rest for you and a long rest for them. However, that helps with your spell slots and recovery or hit dice, though Thomas never gets hit, so kind of a moot point, I suppose. But yeah, I guess now we shall pick back up. It will be somewhere in the range of 5 or 6 in the morning, where dawn is just beginning to crest, the kind of pale light casting across the glade, dew still heavily on the grass. The smell of the dead is now becoming a bit more fresh and rotten versus the kind of iron sting of blood that you had tasted as you had passed out. Quinn and Braynoon, I guess roll me con checks real quick, just for thematic sakes.
Speaking of things I wasn't prepared to do yet.
Yeah, how dare I ask you to roll dice in D&D?
That is a 16 for Braynoon.
Okay.
13.
Okay. So, Braynoon, you would rise first due to your dwarven constitution, and also because you probably didn't take a direct blow, you just kind of collapsed. You would rise probably before Thomas at this point, though you are pretty easy to identify around you that Thomas took care of at least you two and the immediate threat before falling asleep himself. But you would wake up to the sight of Quinn still kind of somewhat carefully set up for slumber by Thomas, and then Thomas wherever he fell for his sleep. And I guess it is now up to you all how you go about your business or what Braynoon does.
So first thing Braynoon's going to do is just kind of try to get a sense of what happened after he went down, which I think we've already established, but just kind of piecing that together. Just items that I want to understand. At this point, have we located Sven's robes and or Lindis's armor?
So I would imagine, Thomas, as you were going about either searching in the wagons or just moving about the site, you would have spotted Sven's robes. They're very distinct, kind of hard to miss. And also, I imagine you and Sven probably sleep somewhat close to each other usually. So if you had moved them or spotted them, they would be there. Brandon, as you're looking around, I don't think it'd be too hard to assume you found them. But yeah, you would find that, but Lindis's armor is not there.
Okay. So yeah, just kind of piecing everything together. Like Braynoon's not in the mental physical state right now of his typical, hey, it's morning, let's get after the day. He's very much like I'm just gonna kind of sit here and wait for the others to wake up.
Okay.
And so yeah, just because at this point Braynoon also doesn't know that Thomas broke the twig. And so that is knowledge that he's not aware of. No idea where Lindis ever was, let alone. And so yeah, he's just like, there's a lot of questions that we have at this point. So
yeah. So as you take those like 20, 30 minutes of just kind of observing and waiting and not quite rising and just trying to piece together what you can, you would see Quinn kind of beginning to move around in his sleep, kind of coming to. Quinn, you would have a very thick and annoying headache kind of currently pounding on the side of your face, but it's resided enough to allow you to function at this point as your eyes kind of open up, a little bit of blurriness having to be pushed away as you are also brought into the same scene.
Oh, we're still here.
Somehow, aye.
Oh, good morning. No. Okay. Everyone died but us and Lindis and Sven are unaccounted for.
They must have got him while he was on watch.
I have my suspicions about that, but let's
We have
have
to go after them.
That's
yeah. Oh, here. I don't know if this is useful anymore, Braynoon, but I'll hand you the broken ends of the two pieces of the twig.
okay. Well, based on that, I assume that Camus thinks we're dead or otherwise incapacitated, which, to be fair, he's not horribly wrong in that assumption. At the moment, we don't have a lot of information. I have my suspicions as to why Lindis is missing. No idea on Sven. But at the moment, he's just gonna kind of look around at the scene. It's like, we need to do something about this. I'm assuming, like, we never really established it, but I'm assuming when the caravan made camp for the night, we went off the road some way, so we're not like right on the road.
You're more or less like 5 or 10 feet removed from the main road. Like, you basically just pulled the wagons off the road and then set up camp due to kind of the size of the group and their standard routine.
Right. Probably shouldn't leave this scene here. A bunch of dead bodies and unguarded carts and such.
When Sparkles was doing his scouting last night, I probably would have made a mental note to go back to the one pathway that you talked about that looked a little more deliberate and less likely to have been caused by goblins. So.
Actually, little side note, odds or evens, Thomas?
Odds.
Mr. Sparkles, during your time asleep, might have indulged in some provided nectar of death from the caravan hands. Could not help himself.
He died?
No, he drank some blood.
Yeah.
Oh. Like, well, that's...
Sparkles is dead. Side note. No, he was too enticed by being left alone and having to indulge a bit of his neglected needs.
We'll keep that between him and I.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'll go inspect that area,
Mm-hmm.
and if anybody wants to come with me.
Braynoon would join you. I have to step away for just a minute, but I'll be right back.
Okay. So Thomas, go ahead and roll me investigation with advantage then.
Right.
What are you doing currently, Quinn?
Just sitting. Gotta recover and not move around too
So you
fast.
don't think that I'm making these up.
Nice.
So that's a 27.
Okay. So as you kind of move off to the side of the road, and this is on the western side of the road where the goblins have kind of set up almost kind of firing range during combat, you would see, of course, all the different tracks that they left as they retreated, but there is that more carefully placed path that you were fixated on. And initially, it's easy enough to discern the outline of like a clear boot print, a more smaller, kind of slimmer, feminine boot print on the edge of the road leading this direction. But even more clearly, and probably a footprint that you are immensely familiar with, is the dragon-kind clawed footprint that is left by your dear Sven, as you see them kind of following one after the other off in that direction. So at least you have the very clear clarification that they left this way together in no real hurry.
And then, upon finding the end of those tracks, I guess.
Are
He
you
didn't
following
kill
those?
us. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're following them, and again, it's Braynoon following you out this direction, you make it perhaps about 150 feet or so away from camp, far enough away that you can no longer really see the caravan from where you're at, the tall grass kind of giving you somewhat of a secluded spot. You come upon this clear area of disturbance. It's maybe about 10, 15 feet wide in every direction, and clearly in the center is where the majority of activity took place, and you can actually see the earth beneath the grass has been somewhat deformed or misshapen or kind of jutting out in this strange demeanor. I imagine you being familiar with either, that this is some sort of spell or arcane influence on this little piece of ground. You would also, again, using your kind of basic investigation skills, notice that there are plenty of smaller pathways quickly leading into this disturbed area where the blades of grass have been kind of shoved inwards, clearly showcasing that something has come in and on to this place. And then there is a thick and distinct trail of a larger group kind of leaving even further west where the grass has been kind of smushed and deformed all the way down to the ground.
And Linsa's armor is still there?
No.
No, they... Okay. Well, it looks like for whatever reason, Sven came here without his robes. Is Lindis? With Lindis, and apparently they were ambushed here. This is the obvious work of offensive or defensive, probably in this capacity, spellcraft.
You would also notice blood in the disturbed area. Not in a copious amount or worrying amount, but clearly there is some.
Is there any difference in dragon-born blood?
That's a great question. For
Yeah,
now, I will say that there probably is to some extent, either in like the taste, the color, or the appearance of it. So you could probably assume that the blood that you spy is goblin blood and elven blood or human-esque blood. So probably belonging to Lindis.
Just be taking it in. a little quiet at this point.
This does explain a few things.
What do you think happened?
Well, I can only think of a few reasons why Sven would disrobe, and that he and someone else would wander this far away from camp
That would
while they're the only ones on watch.
Yeah, I think if we're not making excuses for him, we know exactly what he was doing when he was surprised.
I suppose that my assumption around Lindis was incorrect.
I mean, it's a small consolation, but if he did die, probably exactly how he would have wanted to go out.
Well, the fact that they took him tells me that he's unlikely to be dead, at least at that point in time.
It was more of a joke. Trying to not be too worried. I know that he doesn't do as well as you might think in these situations.
Only because you probably described it, but I wasn't here. Are there clear, like, drag marks where they would have been taken? Okay.
You can basically see this kind of snaking path through the grass where clearly two larger figures have been dragged, and there was no real attempt to try and hide that fact. It's just a path right through the glade.
Well, we should get back, do something about the corpses and carts. Leave some sort of note for Camus and follow this path. At least have an answer of what happened.
I can burn them all.
That seems unnecessary. They likely have families that we should return them to.
How are we going to do that?
We have 3 carts that we can take back to Messidorite once we've determined what happened with Sven and Lindis.
They're going to be ripe.
Anyway, back to the camp.
Okay. So we can pretty easily say that you go through the preparations that you mentioned of moving the corpses on the cart, kind of getting everything immediately off the road. It is also probably worth pointing out that there are, I think it was what I counted, 7 goblin corpses amongst the camp as well.
I was going to ask that.
If you all wanted to move them or deal with them in any sort of way. And then we've talked previously about you using the horses to your advantage in this situation.
That would make sense.
Okay.
Have the wagons been looted that I can tell?
Not that you can tell. I don't think any of you took like great stock of it before the attack, but as far as you can tell by like giving a glance and seeing if like crates have been tipped over or opened or removed, everything looks to be there. It very much seems that from what Quinn witnessed, you woke up to the attack, you fought for as long as you were awake, and then woke up to you winning, to whatever that means.
What were they carrying?
Oh, the cart?
The caravan.
It is a mixture of salt, red wine, pickled ginger, bay nuts, and blossom powder.
Blossom powder for.
The blossom powder is the crushed, dried petals of the brilliance bloom that was used in the Passover event. It is very much used as a kind of religion-esque ingredient for different rituals and whatnot, after kind of the extra have been dried and then crushed into a powder. So they're being shipped away from Messidore.
Does it qualify as incense?
It might if you try hard enough.
I'll take if it qualifies, I'm going to help myself to enough of it to summon Mr. Sparkles should need be.
Okay. But, so, going through the motions of getting everything prepared, is there anything else the group would do before departing the caravan? Again, at this point, we're probably at like 7 or 8 in the morning.
Right.
Is there enough material that I can do some sort of hasty camouflage on these carts, or move? Maybe we can move them.
I mean, there are scythes that we can use to cut down any tall grass. And
I don't want to spend
right
an amount of time engineering on it, but if we can.
My idea was to move the carts far enough off the road that they aren't immediately spotted. Like somebody would have to be either scouting far enough off the road or looking for them to find them.
I mean, there is the clear sign of like battle and blood and guts still across the area, so something has clearly happened here.
Yeah, but it's the difference of somebody coming kind of across 3 carts with corpses piled on them and no answers, and there's blood on the road.
But you guys want to take the time to move the carts off the road and try and obscure them a little bit?
Yeah,
I would like to.
Me too.
I could digitate the blood.
It's true. Thomas can take care of the blood problem.
When all this is over, we're gonna do something with the wagons. Maybe we'll take them all the way to their destination, but
so where's the note for Camus being left then?
I am leaving. So that's one of the things I want to decide with the group is I want to determine and I imagine this is probably something we would have discussed previously, maybe with Camus, but some sort of signal mark of like, hey, this is and so something that would look not obvious to somebody who's not looking for it, but to somebody who is.
Steph's not here, so I'm going to go ahead and rule it for him. When he disrobed, he probably also left his guild emblem with him, or with the robe.
Okay.
So you could probably just leave his badge at the beginning of his trail with whatever note you might want to leave as well.
Right. And my thought was to leave the note with wherever we put the wagons, since that's going to be the...
We should write 2 notes. One like at the marker and leave it with the marker. And then another one if that one gets, I don't know,
missed or skipped over. And it's also probably worth mentioning that this area will probably pass through by other travelers before Camus.
Right. That's what I mean. Is I want it to be something that other people aren't going to stumble upon and mess with, but that he would be looking for. Because my first assumption is he's going to show up to wherever the twig was broken looking for our bodies. And when he doesn't find them, he's going to try to figure out what happened. But
So does he know, like, I wasn't totally clear on this, does he know where the twig was broken, not just that it was broken?
Yeah, to give you a more clear definition of it, again, because it probably either would have been explained to you or maybe perhaps it's common knowledge of Talora. Whenever the messenger twig is broken, he is like given almost like a clairvoyant image of like or position of where it was broken. So he just knows that where it was broken is where he is heading. It doesn't like track you or move with you, but he knows that it is at this point on the road in this direction.
So for what it's worth, I broke it when I was on the far bottom right-hand corner of the map.
Yeah.
Where we might be bringing those carts anyway. Like bringing them a little further off the road that way.
Okay. So, fair enough. I think that's an easy enough thing to make happen.
I feel with the 3 of us, we can piece together something. But yeah, I just want to have a symbol that we can leave, especially as we're moving, in case Camus intends to follow us. I have no idea what he'll do after seeing the letter, but yeah. So I'd also like to take one of the scythes with us just in case, because if we need to protect ourselves from hoppers or whatever. So.
Okay. So as you all unhitch the horses from the wagons after kind of getting them into a position which is a little bit more secluded, you each would have 2 horses to you, and I imagine what we've kind of discussed previously is you are mounted currently on a horse for riding while having one kind of attached or tethered to you, and then eventually switching off to the next one is the plan. As you all mount up and kind of groan through your various injuries, except Thomas, which I guess is only emotional up until this point, you begin to follow the clear tracks westward yet again to the place where the ground has been disturbed, and you can kind of assume was the last place that Sven and Lindis were conscious or alive. And then it is the easy yet arduous task of plowing through the glade and following this rather clear trail that has been left behind. It is a bit demoralizing, I suppose, as you begin on this trek, seeing that this pathway that you can very clearly see for quite some distance due to its neglect of any attempt of hiding it goes over crest over crest over crest. You are a fair amount of time behind these individuals, mainly due to the fact that you all took a very long rest as they were traversing, and now you are following up on them as quickly as possible upon horseback. Everyone throw me a perception check real quick. Actually, do it with disadvantage. I swear to God, Rob.
Let's see here. There's a net. There's an. Okay.
Oh, you can do it. I believe.
Natural 1 and a 19.
God damn.
Yeah, I rolled a 16 and a 17, so
Okay.
Which I believe is only a +2. Yeah, so 18.
I love these dice today.
And Quinn?
Sorry, what?
Quinn?
So yeah, I got an 18.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Damn. You guys are fixated. As you all are pounding across the earth rather aggressively, I suppose. To be clear, these horses are not meant for this kind of hard riding, but they're going to, because this is a rather extreme scenario. They are probably not the most pleased with you, but that's besides the point. You would all again witness the very clear kind of reflections and sparkles of the various glade elves in the distance, keeping track of your navigations and motions and traversal kind of into their territory. They're all very far off, but you are able to find them and kind of isolate them. The other bit of perception you were able to pick up on is as you are, I guess, moving at a pretty aggressive speed, you were glancing down and spotting probably Thomas being the most familiar with it, at least at a visual recognition. Small puffs or coatings of Sven's collection, the Tanzia leaf that he enjoys keeping in his little box. It is almost left like a bit of a breadcrumb trail to some extent. It's every maybe 300-400 feet before eventually it does run out. It seems that either he was unable to continue dispersing it or he ran out of his supply, whatever it might be. But you are able to at least spot that, which gives you some glimmer of hope that up until the point that you have gotten to, he's been alive to this extent.
So where did he keep it?
That was my question.
Another thing that I am going to 100% rule for Seth, because I think me and him are one currently, is I don't think he would enjoy carnal pleasure without his incense. So I'm ruling that he had it with him.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I forgot to do before we left, did any of the guards have any bows or crossbows or anything?
Yeah, I think 3 of them had crossbows.
I would have taken one of the crossbows and any bolts with us.
Fair enough.
I assume they're light crossbows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, as you guys continue, hour after hour of traveling in this manner passes by, and it is, I guess, somewhat strange, still feeling that adrenaline of the night before and the fear of what might be. You're just left in this very peaceful glade, the thundering of hooves being really the only sound or thing of notice as you just keep progressing further and further west, growing closer and closer to the mountain range. It is nearing around maybe 4 or 5 in the afternoon at this point. The sun has fully made its traversal across the sky, where you come upon what is pretty easily recognizable as some sort of temporary gathering point, maybe even a campsite. It is very rudimentary in its appearance. It looks just kind of like maybe a 20 or 30 foot wide circle that all the grass has been trampled down. There is positions where like something had been laying where the grass is a bit more indented. In the center there is a very small, somewhat covered up and kicked over fire, or the remnants of a fire, that you do come across, and it is clear yet again that the track that you were following continues further. Yeah, I guess if you want to interact with that at all or just keep going, but that would be what you come upon kind of as we're getting into the afternoon and evening of the day.
I mean, probably a cursory glance just to make sure, like, no unexpected pools of blood, no corpses, that sort of stuff, but...
Mm-hmm. You would, Braynon, give me a quick investigation with disadvantage.
$13.
Okay.
Kind of a 21.
Looking around the campsite real quick, just kind of staying on your horse as you're just making sure there isn't anything clear or obvious, you would spy one of the indentations that is more or less what you could assume where someone was put to rest or laid down is a more appropriate term. There is a bit of fresh blood, is not quite the correct term, though it is not fully dried yet, which gives you a little bit of a beacon of hope as to see that you are catching up, or at least perhaps closing the distance. That you are, again, probably pretty confident is from Lindis. There, as you are fixated on that and kind of look in a more focused scope around that area, you do see what looks like rags, bits of clothing or leather, or just like old bits of burlap that are also bloodied or soaked in blood that were kind of thrown out past the campsite's little perimeter, kind of off in the grass, like dangling from the various reeds. So that's whatever you want to make a story for that you can spot.
Okay. I mean, I would point that out to the group, but...
Mm-hmm. So this is about a whole day of travel that you kind of double-paced your first horses on. This is probably about the time that they would be waning, and you have to switch over to your second one. Are you all planning to keep up this pace through the encroaching night, or stopping at any point? What is the plan?
As this comes up as a subject, I say to Braynoon, any rescue mission that we attempt will have greater odds of success if we're fresh.
Well, I'm gonna look specifically at Thomas, since while I don't know mechanically, Brandon knows he didn't get a full night's rest. You're one of our more important things as we come into this. How are you doing for your spells?
Pretty poorly. Could do with rest.
Based on, and this is of course going to be an assumption, but based on the trail we've been following and the campsite we found, does it seem like they are pushing or just kind of moving at a steady pace? Like, does it seem like they're rushing to get back to wherever they're camping, or they're just moving?
I feel like that's probably too difficult to tell. With a mixture of, that doesn't leave a clear sign, and also goblins move in a very erratic way anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So you're more or less just left with the path and whatever that may be. I will take this opportunity to point out, as decisions are being made, that all of you are aware, even Thomas being less worldly as the other, of what goblins do and what their intention probably is in this scenario. So while it is not... Oh, I should also move you all to reflect where you are at, because I forgot to do so. So while it is not 100% a reality that stopping a night or being a few hours behind could lead to some horrific implications, it is certainly the more likely option if you are later than earlier.
I mean, to spell it out exactly, I had no spell slots left, and then with the short rest, I thought I'd taken a long rest, but with the short rest, I only have 2 first levels. So with another short rest, I would get 2 more first levels, and with another short rest, I could recover 1 second level, and with another short rest, I could recover the other one. So
that was my initial thought, was we take a short rest and then resume. Just because it's not going to do us any good if we start suffering exhaustion and we go into combat. And so, but I mean, especially not know, because our assumption is they have a minimum of like a 12-hour lead on us.
It's
based on when the attack happened and when we roughly, that's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And so unless we're traveling, like even if we're traveling at twice the speed they are, that still only means
you are.
I would assume so as well, but that still means we've only regained 6 hours of that 12. So,
well, it is also probably worth pointing out that they've stopped to rest, and they are carrying 2 fully grown people. So it is not outside the realm of possibility that you are traveling much faster than them. So as far as time frame, it is very kind of gray and unclear, but you are catching up at kind of not an alarming rate, but a hopeful rate.
Right, yeah. And so, like I said, it's not going to do us any good if we stumble upon them and aren't prepared, and we're already down 1 primary caster.
It's up to you guys. I'm just trying to make sure that everything is made clear.
Right, yeah.
Like,
help them finish the job they didn't finish back at the...
Right, yeah. So, like,
I'm free... Well, no. Never mind. Because that ability to recover on a short rest only recovers with the long rest. So
the long rest. So you're at what you're going to be at.
Yeah, I've got 2 first level spells available, and then I can... And then we're down to 10.
Because that's Braynoon's train of thought, is knowing what goblins are going to do with their captives. Sven's time is numbered right now. And so, because he's not going to be of value to them for long. But it also doesn't make sense for us to... Because my other assumption is that Sven isn't getting a long rest, so even if we free him, he's not going to be in a state to be a ton of help. I don't know how much. So yeah.
So what's the decision group?
I'm thinking right now we take a long rest with the intention of only taking short rests going forward. If everyone agrees with that.
So you're going to do a full 8-hour long rest?
Full 8 hours now, and then no long rests unless something happens that would force us to, but no long rests until
Brooklyn. Right.
Okay. So I imagine you all are doing watches during this long rest.
And I'd even be okay with Quinn and I taking a short rest and taking longer watches to allow for Thomas to get a long rest.
So I don't actually have anything that's dependent on long rest other than recovery.
And
I
that's what I mean, is that I'm more concerned with Thomas being tapped out, and it's basically you and me fighting an entire goblin camp, and that didn't turn out well so well the night before. So
I mean, hadn't had any coffee or anything. It was just jump up and fight. That always sucks.
I mean, I woke up to getting punched in the face, so...
I think Thomas had it the worst. He had to run away. But alright. As you all... I'm assuming, are you resting at the spot that they seem to rest at?
I mean, I guess it depends on when did we find that camp.
This is all around that same time. Like, this is when this conversation took place.
Then yeah, probably. I mean, that makes the most sense.
So, Thomas, you were kind of given the prime amount of rest as your companions kind of shimmy around the time frame to let you recuperate. As you go to sit, and I guess this is probably noticeable to all of you, but the previous campfire location, the kind of smoldering embers of what they had built, is still kind of slightly smoking, to the point where it's pretty clear, obvious to you all, that like this was put out today or pretty recently. Thomas, almost just kind of out of habit, due to your kind of weekly or evening rituals of trying to stare into the flames of a campfire or whatever other source of fire you have about, you kind of watch the smoking tendril kind of coming off of it looks like they just took a bunch of like wet grass, kind of threw it over to help snuff it out. There's this thin, small, wispy trail of smoke that you're kind of watching as you're beginning to kind of settle in, the evening light kind of casting over you. It appears to kind of shape almost in the curve or the recognizable bend of your horn, where the actual end of the smoke kind of tips itself off, and then you watch as it almost kind of mirrors itself and creates the other shape of your somewhat non-symmetrical horns, and again ends in that same kind of point. And it maybe is just your fatigue or your stress or the tension of everything kind of manifesting this image in your mind, but you just kind of get that weird tingle in the back of your mind as you watch this bit of smoke almost kind of mimic your image in this very strange way.
I will keep that vision in my head as I'm going to sleep.
Okay. So that is the afternoon/evening of the 26th, and let's go ahead and do, I guess, perception checks for everyone on watch, which everyone would have one, but Thomas would certainly be the shortest. So.
16.
Okay.
21.
You guys are using all your good rolls, I swear.
I know, I'm not happy with this. Because I'm at an 18.
Okay. Coming into the morning of the 27th, which I guess it probably makes sense that Thomas is the one last on watch to allow him the longest time to sleep. The night seems to go uneventful. There are no alarms or strange sounds or, concerning images that come upon you. Cannot speak right now. The horses, thankfully, seem to have some time to rest, though, as they also indulge in a bit of non-hard adventuring. But yeah, you would wake up undisturbed to the next morning with the same path before you, the glade surrounding you. It's perhaps maybe 6, 7 in the morning as you kind of get a pretty early start yet again.
Yeah, about 30 minutes or so before I was planning on waking everyone up, I'd get everything ready that I could so that our departure is as quick as it can be.
Okay. So as you all are woken up by your fabulous companion and mount your steeds, I'm assuming just same speed and going down the path that you were following?
Until we start picking up other side.
I guess, yeah, everyone again, throw me perception. I know we're kind of hitting that skill a lot today, but I don't make the rules.
Well, there you go. Now it's a 5.
Yeah, it's only a 16 now.
What was yours, JC? I didn't catch it.
15.
Okay. So 16 and 15 were the highest? Okay.
Yeah.
As the morning hours kind of go by, and again, the thundering of hooves kind of pick back up as you are stampeding your way, much like the Glade Elves, except perhaps a bit less gracefully, through their lands. You are getting to the point where you are stepping out of the more open, rolling hills and into the kind of raising, almost jagged, stony foothills just beneath the mountains off to your west. There is a few different times where the path that you are following has to alter its course to move around some large boulder or stone structure. There are various kind of like cliffs and peaks and ridges kind of rising up around you. It is around maybe 11 or noon in that general time frame where, Thomas, you see it first as you are again kind of using the potential stress of losing your probably best friend, I guess is fair to say, to really fixate on what is currently happening. You spy a ridgeline ahead of you, to the point where this is up and over a hill, and then past that hill that you are seeing over, there is a thicket of trees that kind of, I don't know, creates somewhat of a point of interest in your mind before the kind of sharp cliffs of the mountain rise up behind it. You spy just a little bit of movement, just enough to kind of catch you off guard, and then to bring your horse to a halt, and then fixate a little bit more, and it far enough away that it's not exactly clear. There isn't precise details that you can make out, but you see perhaps maybe at least what you can see of it, a 10, 15, 20 foot tall cliff face of earth and stone and rock that's kind of fallen away naturally to create this sharp curve. And on top of the ridgeline before the trees, there's little bits of motion, just small silhouettes, figures, dots kind of moving from one side to the other. And given the scene that you're in and what you are currently doing, it is fair enough to assume that the path that you are following that leads in that direction, you can put two and two together and assume that perhaps the small bits of movement you are seeing is goblinoid figures, or at least they're in that direction, so they had to have seen them or interacted with them.
Yeah, so I would make that abundantly clear to everyone else, point out, make sure we all got our eyes locked on it.
Roughly how far away did you say that was?
We're probably getting close to a mile, but not quite. Like, it's that far away that it's pretty hard to discern details, but you are able to spot it.
I think at this first sign, I'm gonna go ahead and ditch the horse, and begin scouting for realsies.
Mm-hmm.
Nice and sneaky like.
Okay.
Roughly what time of day is it right now?
It's around noon.
Okay.
So, Mr. Sparkles will happily accompany you if you want him.
So is the party
why not?
moving forward, or is Quinn moving forward in solidarity?
That's what I kind of wanted to determine right now, because if we're... Part of me would like to be confident that we're seeing what we think we're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we could pace behind them at roughly this distance,
Mm-hmm.
wait for them to make camp or stop or whatever it is, and then close the different distance and assault at that point, rather than, when they're all awake and alert and active. And
Mm-hmm.
Any sort of lookouts posted in those woods or up on the cliffs looking down at us, and we're coming across an open field, that's going to be a problem.
Right. So, assuming that... I'm making a lot of assumptions about their alertness and awareness because they're goblins. So, in my head, they're not paying attention to what's coming from behind them, but I don't actually know that. And so I don't really want to get closer than this right now until we have a more opportune moment.
If we're just a mile off, I am pretty confident in my ability. Like, I can cross that space without them seeing me, just to see if it's who we're looking for.
I will say that there is a full hill between you and them, so just Quinn getting up to that hill would probably give you more context, if anything.
Right. So yeah, I'm fine with Quinn scouting. I'm just thinking at this point now we slow our pace to keep pace with them until we have more information. As long as nobody has any objections to that.
Okay.
Well,
So Quinn, you're going ahead, and then doesn't Sparkles have a range limit of some sort?
Yeah, want to say 120.
So are you guys staying within that range, or are you letting him go ahead?
Well, so the range is your ability to keep
It's
telepathic
the
communication,
telepathy.
but he doesn't cease to exist past that point.
Yeah, but he just can't do the trick of being there.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think stay where you are, and then he can relay what he saw as soon as we get back in our cell phone range.
Okay, so yeah, Quinn, go ahead, throw me a stealth check with advantage.
It's 100 feet, by the way.
Okay, and then also throw me a perception.
It's a new day, right?
It is, and you've had a long rest.
It's important.
25 stealth.
Mm-hmm.
Perception 24.
Okay. So I'm gonna do something a little funky. Yeah, okay, let's see if this works. You all cannot see anything currently? Oh, no, you can. Yes?
I can see what
Yeah.
looks like a microscope slide of some sort.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Let me do...
I just have a black blob.
There we go. You can see that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm also... Hopefully this doesn't break anything. Gonna do that. Beautiful. And that. Beautiful. All right. So now you should be able to see kind of a grayed out area and the regular area. And you are not actually on this map. This is just to help give you some sort of reference. So let me move you out. Okay. So Quinn, as you sneak forward and you kind of hit that hill, that crest between you and what Thomas had spotted, you are given a pretty advantageous position up on this higher altitude to kind of look down or down and then back up at what you are seeing. And it is clear that the goblins that you have been pursuing, again, the path that you can clearly just like trail with your eyes, leads to this somewhat smaller, almost easily passed over opening in the rock face or the cliff face that you had spotted. There is a handful of goblins centered around that small entrance, so it's a pretty easy conclusion to make that this is perhaps where they call home, or at least where they are residing in currently. Up on the cliff, again about 10-15 feet above the ground, you do see a few different goblins kind of stood guard, more or less, as they are bow in hand, kind of marching around the perimeter of the cliff face, looking off in your general direction. There is a pretty dense thicket of woods and forest behind them, kind of overgrowing up on the cliff itself. But that would be the general landscape that you are able to see.
So, addressing Mr. Sparkles quietly, I say, I forget how this works. Can you understand me?
Mr. Sparkles would kind of like, I guess, perched on your shoulder, kind of curl his head down to give you a bit of side eye, and then...
I'll take that as a yes. We're going to keep this simple. You go left, and I'll go right. I mean, you go that way, and I'll go that way. Just trying to get a good look at this place, that's all. And then we'll come back here.
So you're directing him to head off kind of left, west, in that general area?
Yeah, him west, me east. Just to get as complete a picture as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
I do see it looks like 3 goblins up on this ridge or this elevation.
There are 4. There's 1 to the west of the entrance and 3 to the east of the entrance.
Okay, yeah, I see. All right, and so I want to see if what else might be up there, and if he can get a view into the hole, then that might be nice too. But
so you want to get like actually on, because right now you are currently hundreds of feet removed from this map. So you want to get close enough to actually be on there and poking around.
How about how far, like how long is this ridge? How am I able to go
It's
in a really wide arc just to get up on the ridge so I'm even with the top layer?
moving slowly and kind of taking a very long kind of flanking route. It would probably take you maybe about an hour or so to get to a point where it's less of a ridge, and then you kind of are coming up behind them through the woods.
Hour's not too bad. I think that's worth it.
Okay. So you're doing that, and you're attempting to send Sparkles to do the same?
Yeah.
Okay. And the party's still hanging back where they were left?
Yep.
Alright. So Quinn, go ahead and do me 3 stealth checks.
All right, that's going to be 18, 20, and 26.
Okay. And then, Thomas, go ahead and throw me 3 stealth checks for Sparkles, too. Actually, throw him with advantage, because he's a freaking rodent.
Even if they saw him, would they even know?
Yeah, we'll fucking retread this. At least it's not a brewery this time.
Yeah. All right. So I think it's +5 to stealth with advantage. All right. The first
That's
one
not
is
so much that he didn't get noticed as was he doing anything weird enough to be investigated.
He's doing fair stuff.
19, 18, and 20.
Okay. So as you both take the time, and again, I'll describe this as Mr. Sparkles, but no one is fully aware of what is going on, to move up and around the ridgeline, him taking the western side, you're taking the east, him finding a much easier time just to kind of walk up to the cliff, scamper up, and then into the woods without really having to worry all too much about being spotted. Quinn, you eventually make your way all the way around and slowly start skulking through the woodlands. I guess to the best, I'll actually put you on the map if you want to get that close. Is that the intention?
I just want to see what else is on top of that elevation. I don't need to be within shouting distance.
Okay. Being in that general vicinity, up in that northeastern corner I just placed you in, throw me a perception check real quick.
17.
Okay. As far as you are aware, and also being fairly aware of goblins and their various methods, you kind of scan the foliage, the canopy, the treetops, anything between you and the cliff face, I suppose, and it more or less looks like there is nothing hidden or in wait. The guards that are placed atop the cliff appear to be the only guards that you can spot, at least on this eastern side. I guess that would be the extent of your observation.
All right, I think this is a pretty clear picture. Time to head back.
Okay. So now, taking again about an hour or so to slink your way back in the opposite direction, you would be reaching the party. Yeah, it's around like 1, 2-ish at this point. I'm
able to rendezvous with the weasel, right?
Yeah. I guess you would both meet back up at your previous location.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, Quinn, you would meet back up with Sparkles, who can't communicate anything he saw, but just kind of...
He's alive, so that's that's fine.
But yeah, and then you would rendezvous with your party, where you would see Quinn return unharmed with Sparkles. And yeah.
So does it look like that's going into a cave? Is that what that is?
More or less, yeah.
And around the whole way around, there's no other indication of any other entrance?
As far as you can tell, yeah. From the very brief amount that you can see inside, the actual entrance itself is being guarded by a goblin. It's a fairly small hole to the point that, like, even goblins are probably crouching to get through. It's maybe only like 2.5 feet, both in diameter and height. The goblin that is standing in front of it blocks the majority of your view, but it looks more just kind of like a earthy tunnel, or maybe like pit or dugout versus like a full cave system, I suppose.
we get the impression that this is their primary. This is where they were heading. This was their destination, not just considering they stopped in the middle of the day.
It also is probably pretty evident that like the area in front of the entrance that's being guarded, there's plenty of indication of like activity. Like the grass is weared down, the dirt's kind of exposed. So yeah, it's probably a fair assumption that this is their home, if you want to call it that.
This seems small to me. I don't know if maybe it just goes further down than it looks like. It's bigger on the inside.
That would have been a pretty tight fit for their leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the question is, do we assault now? Or wait for evening and risk Sven?
Yeah, they're stronger in the night anyway, right? Got more inherent advantage to fighting at night.
Well, I think we also can all see in the dark. I think it's not, there isn't an advantage to.
Yeah. Are they disadvantaged during the daytime?
No, that's kobolds.
Yeah.
Okay.
The last thing that we had to go and exterminate. And assuming there's some sort of tunnel system under there, that's not really going to matter, but I'm just wondering if... Because I'm assuming Quinn gave us a number of goblins that he saw.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, would they have fewer out guarding the entrance at night? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If there's fewer out guarding the entrance at night, that gives us more of a chance to get in before a massive amount of alarm has been raised, whereas it might be difficult for us to take out 10 before one of them scurries inside, and
I think
who knows what happens at that point.
Keep from alarming them either way.
Oh, it is, absolutely, but...
They're going to be, at nighttime, they're just going to go get more rapey.
And that's what I mean, is that we assault now, potentially they still don't know what Sven is. We just wait until night. His usefulness might have been determined to be not useful.
Tired of watching him when they could be getting busy.
I like to think that they don't know if he's useful or not.
So here's what I want. Since Seth isn't here yet, we can take bets. I want Sven to pretend to be capable of getting pregnant, let's say.
To act as feminine as possible.
Yeah. And fool them.
He could just be dead.
That's also true, but
That's not funny.
I'm not trying to be a buzzkill, but one of your companions is currently kidnapped, and you guys are like, yeah, let's make him a twink.
That's out of game.
I know, but I mean, we're here.
It's a little in-game considering how he ended up getting us thrashed. Mm-hmm. I assume that you guys on the road filled Quinn into what you scouted.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
probably before we left, Quinn was fully aware.
I hope they didn't kill him so I can.
So I'll pose the question again, assault now, or
unless
increase risk and wait for night?
He's absolutely overridden. Thomas is going to want to go now.
I think we may as well go now, too, actually.
Yep. Yeah, I was pulling the party more than anything, so...
All right. So what is the plan?
Well, we're going to go that way, and we're going to kill a bunch of them.
I mean, ideally, get as close as we can without getting noticed, and...
I want to get back around behind them.
And that was my thought for you. But my biggest concern is I want to, for as long as possible, I want to keep them from going inside, which that's going to require at least someone to assault from the front.
Yeah, I'm gonna plan on casting web right in the entryway there, unless you guys can think of a better use for it.
I
Just
do
give
not
me a
disagree
head
with that at all.
start so I can get behind them, and then when they see you and try to fight you,
Right.
I can take the ones on the hill. Who knows how many I can kill before they even realize I'm up there.
Especially if all of their attention is on us. And
Right.
so, yeah, I agree with that, because otherwise the ones on the hill are going to be... Because roughly how high is that ledge? Are we talking like
We'll
10,
say 20
15?
feet.
Okay. So, yeah, they're going to be annoying to deal with from below. And so if Thomas and I come from the front, Quinn comes around, assaults up on the ridge. Other than that, like I said, it's getting as close as we can without getting noticed.
I wonder if there's any way we could stampede the horses into them. Probably not.
I don't think there are enough of them for a stampede.
Yeah.
They would
And
see the goblins and turn.
Yeah. No.
yeah, unless you have some way of mind controlling animals, I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, if you plan to cast web at the entrance, you and I can start to pick off the ones on the ground while Quinn deals with the ones up top.
Oh yeah, I'm going to deal with them.
All right. So to help expedite this process a little bit, Quinn, where do you want to be when they are discovered, or when they potentially kick off combat?
If it's the same map, the very northern edge, I want to be exactly behind them. If I can get there.
I imagine we can. We'll do some stealth checks, but do you want to be within a certain range or a certain position is what I'm asking? Like, this is your chance to be where you need to be tactfully.
Let's say 60 feet.
You can move your piece.
I can get within 60 feet
Mm-hmm.
and dash with a cunning action on one turn and be there to kill.
Okay.
Yeah, from where you're at right now, you're 50 from the one on the furthest right, 65 the one to his left.
Is this difficult terrain?
Maybe going through like the denser woods or trees just off to your east. Yeah, but as far as the smaller shrubbery, I would count that as you can get through that pretty easily.
This is also pretty good cover too, though, so I
Yeah.
can move through this and get even closer.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say like there. How about that?
Okay. I think that is fair. Go ahead, roll me. We'll do 2 stealth checks this time. And then Braynoon and Thomas, you are just approaching? Are you trying to approach stealthily?
No,
What's your plan?
I would like to get as close as possible without getting noticed.
Okay. All right. What was your rolls, Quinn?
18 and 25.
Okay. I guess Braynoon and Thomas, roll me stealth checks, trying to approach and get as close as possible.
How many do you want? Just one?
Just one.
16.
Let's see. Do I have a bonus? 18.
Okay. Let's go ahead and roll initiative. So I just have that ready.
18 for Braynoon.
5.
14 plus 8 is 22.
Yep. Which will be kind of odd because you'll be first up in initiative if they get covered, and you can't ready a move, dash, and an action.
I'll probably will just wait. I would just pass.
Fair enough. Okay.
I think our trigger that we sort of decided on was Thomas casting web, and since Thomas seems to be at the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
it probably means
what
we
is the
lose our
range
surprise
of web?
round. But was it
It's going to be
is it 60 feet?
60 feet, probably, yeah.
You guys rolled. It was a 16 and an 18 for stealth.
Yeah.
Yes, 16 for me, 18 for him.
Okay, so 16 is the lowest. Let's see. And I threw it on my desk. Sweet. Okay. Okay. Give me one moment. So just to reiterate, so I have it correct, the goal is to sneak up, have Thomas cast web on the, I guess, entrance. That is the kicking off point, and then going from there. Okay. So
I believe so.
Want to be within 60 feet of the entrance without being beautiful. So we will put you there and there, with assuming Sparkles with Thomas. There we go.
No, there's movement. I was like, nothing's moved.
Sorry. All right. So that's where Quinn is. That's where you guys are at. And Thomas is going to open up with web, which is a 20 foot by 20 foot, you said?
Yeah.
And you want to cast it...
just to maximize the entrance, like...
So something like that?
No, a little bit.
Like one square south.
One more tile south.
Okay, there.
Yeah, that seems good.
Okay.
What are you guys? Good?
Alrighty. So let's get off dramatic music and get into some combat music. Okay, so yeah, Thomas, you are at the bottom of the initiative order. So basically, we're just moving through our surprise round. I guess, Brandon, if you wanted to ready an action, or Quinn, if you wanted to ready an action, you could.
I'm just gonna wait. Thomas is at the alternative top.
Okay.
Right. I would have readied a crossbow shot on... For some reason, why won't it let me ping? Whatever. On the one that's in the entrance.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead and give me that attack roll then, and then they don't roll for their saves until the beginning of their turn, is what we realized last time. Okay.
So that is... Hold on, I'm not used to using ranged weapons. It's a +4 to hit, so that is a modded 20 to hit.
That would hit.
And that is 8 damage.
That would take care of numero uno.
And that is my reaction.
Actually, because this is probably worthwhile doing, and it helps me a little bit, I'm just going to mark dead ones with an X, because I lose track of how many we've killed sometimes, and it's a pain in the butt. Anyway, alright. So, Thomas, why don't you go ahead and describe the scene taking place? Actually, everyone. We'll do a little bit of a round robin. Quinn, describe to me where you're at and kind of what you are looking at. Thomas, you and Braynoon skulking up, casting your spell, and then Braynoon, you can finish us off with your lovely shot to start off our combat.
So, I drew my sword before I got close enough to risk them hearing a shink noise. And so I'm just sort of carrying it almost behind me in like a reversed grip. And picking my way through the brush. I am... There are no lasers in this world, but I'm laser focused.
You're thread focused.
I'm in my element. I'm really enthusiastic about killing these goblins. But it manifests as just a desensitized sort of like I'm a jeweler that's working on a ring. I really just want to get the little details right and put the end of my rapier in the goblin's left ear hole and just be very, very, very precise. So, picking through the brush, moving like one muscle group at a time, sort of like if you watch a cat that's looking forward to jumping on something.
So yeah, Quinn, as you are very delicately making your way closer and closer, you're kind of just waiting to hear whatever the kickoff of combat might be, whether it's Braynoon or Thomas or goblins raising an alarm. You are ready and poised to exact the revenge of being so carelessly tossed aside last time. And yes, Thomas, as you are moving up with your companion, how does that look, sir?
So, it's fairly mundane what we're describing. We've moved up and
You're also casting web.
and we're we've hidden ourselves, and now I'm preparing to cast. But it's more interesting is what he's feeling. He's felt a lot of different emotions in his life, but rage is not typically ever been one of them, if ever one of them. And I think, does he recognize any of the goblins?
Probably not.
Well, regardless, he's looking at them and putting all the events of the last couple of days, and it's all culminating right here. And as he begins the incantation, it's not that school book focus of, diligent study. It's almost something more primal, as he's just drawing from the emotion, and the words are slipping through his mouth without really much control from his conscious brain. And it's almost impatient. He's impatient to get this over with so he can get on with the business of slaughtering them to get through that hole where he knows his friend is. So but there would be really no outward vision of that.
So Brandon, as you are moving up beside the university student that has now found himself very much out of his element and in a situation that is kind of igniting a different side of his emotion, you would see him, as you were both kind of skulking through the tall grass, or now more or less obscured behind this larger bit of shrubbery, him moving through the arcane process that you've seen him go through a few times now at this point, and as he goes to shoot out the cascades of webs, or however we flavor his wonderful ability, you go to take your shot, sir.
Yeah, so Braynoon's proficiency with crossbows is not a problem, but it's just the familiarity. So over the last couple of days, he's probably taken a few practice shots, getting a feel for it again. And as he tends to do in combat situations, he just kind of falls back into that military training of, this is clinical, this is, we have our objective, let's get this done. And so as he sees the webs just kind of falling onto the ground, he lines up the shot, aiming, directly between the eyes of the goblin in the entrance, fires with slight hope that his training is still there, but just the confidence of, you need to get done what you need to get done.
Mm-hmm. So as all of you kind of enact your initial surge of action, though Quinn's surge of action is a very deliberate lack of action, the goblins are immediately cast into disarray as this ambush is set upon them, being very much reversed on what they had dealt to you 2 nights previously. The first one goes down as Thomas's web spell kind of cascades across the cliff face and the entrance to this whole tunnel cave system that you've stumbled across. Quinn, you feel that kind of tightening of your muscles as the adrenaline kicks in, as it all prepares to kick off. And that is where we'll take our 10-minute break. So Quinn, as you are skulking your way through the shrubbery, you are concealed by the foliage of the woodlands kind of up upon the cliff. You are fixated on the goblin that you are prepared to dispatch as you hear the somewhat distinct sounds of combat taking place, both the casting of the web and the thumping of a goblin corpse hitting the ground being the sign of alert that then causes all of your prepared muscles to lurch into action as you take your turn, sir.
All right, I want to try to maintain my stealth here.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I'm going to move to here, right behind him. I'm assuming that they're facing away, like they're looking towards these other guys.
Yeah.
So, coming up behind him, raising my sword. And that is 13 plus something. 13 plus 5, 18.
Yep, that would hit.
And the damage is going to be 12.
Okay. So with you trying to take these guys out quietly or stealthily, I'm not going to rule that you are actively taking the hide action, but you are trying to maintain your stealth as you approach them so that you can get the drop on them. So every time you attempt to do this, I'll have you roll a stealth check. So go ahead and roll me that.
And I can hide with cunning action too. So.
Yeah, but this is like running up to him to actually do the attack.
26.
Okay. Yeah, so you are easily prepared, ready, and focused enough to glide from your hiding position, get behind your opponent, and go ahead. And how do you dispatch this first gentleman, sir?
So what's he doing?
He is like maybe about a foot away from the edge of the cliff. He's holding a short bow, and he was like kind of scanning the horizon off in the distance where you can see your party kind of approached from. You can almost even see all the way down to the coastline, very far away, kind of across the main road. But his alertness is now very much fixated on the action going on at the entrance to the cave. He is already grabbing an arrow from his quiver and putting it to the string. He is about to like draw it back as you are racing towards him.
So in the same motion, I come around with one hand to clap over his face as the rapier just comes up through the torso and then back down, and then just bringing him with me, Splinter Cell style, just far enough to get him behind a bush,
Okay.
and then letting him drop.
Okay. So as you race up behind him, he is about to bear down whatever goblin frenzy he wields. Your gloves. Your gloved hand claps over his mouth, and you can feel his lips trying to separate, trying to produce noise. It's just this muffled attempt at some sort of alert or alarm as your blade cleanly and distinctly sinks up through his chest, out the other side, protruding through the very thin armor that covers his chest. As he flails a little bit, the bow kind of falling and teetering on the edge of the cliff, not quite clattering down to the earth below, as you then drag him backwards in the position, quickly slithering him back to the foliage and away from prying eyes. So, good on you, sir. All right. Braynoon, sir, you are up as you have launched your crossbow, dispatched your first opponent, and the rest of the goblins are now quickly trying to figure out what is going on. It's more or less easy to assume that they can see where the bolt came from and where you and Thomas are, so that's the general kind of direction of their attention.
Yeah, that's fine. I am going to move out here. As I do that, I'm going to fire another crossbow bolt at this guy up here.
Okay.
And that is a 13 plus 4, 17 to hit.
That would hit.
Oh, that damage isn't as good as I wanted. That is going to be 6 damage to him.
Okay, he would be bloodied. As he is doing a very similar action to the one that Quinn just dispatched, as I guess out of the peripheral of your vision, you see Quinn taking out the guard off to the far east. This one is, again, preparing to knock the arrow, bring it back as he's scanning for a target, and as he finds you and makes eye contact with you briefly, you see your bolt sink deep into his abdomen, clearly inflicting a wound that will eventually kill him, but doesn't currently bring him down, as he looks far less intrigued in killing you, but is still intent on killing you.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then... measure real quick. So I've used 10-ish feet to get to there, so I can't fully get up to him. So what I will do so I will drop the crossbow. As a bonus action, I'm going to summon the bonded hand axe that I left back at the wagon. No idea if Camus has found it yet or not, but whatever. And why not? I'm going to action surge and throw the hand axe at that guy.
Okay.
That is a 16 to hit.
That hits.
Okay, and hand axe is 1d6. So that is 5 plus 3 damage for 8 damage.
That would do him in.
And I will walk to there. And as part of continuing my move action, I will pull out my warhammer.
So, Brandon, as you go bursting from the bush, the goblin up on the cliff kind of meeting your gaze, you just quickly snap the bolt up, or the crossbow up in his direction, releasing the bolt, inflicting your damage as you're more or less disregarding him for the moment. As you then summon your hand axe, the goblin that is on the ground in front of you, quickly trying to scramble to formulate some sort of defense or plan. He kind of looks back at his brethren as you manifest your axe into your hand, fling it in his direction. As he is turning back around to face you, it just cleanly cuts between his nose, separating his face as a big spew of blood goes splattering into the air, and he drops like a literal ragdoll to the ground as you then pull out your next weapon and continue charging forward. And that would bring us to... Okay. Raynoon and Thomas, give me a perception check real quick.
Natural 1.
Nice.
Not a natural one, but a 5.
Nice. Due to the bloodlust setting into both of you, Braynoon currently being very effective at dishing it out, as Thomas, you are preparing to unleash your fury yet again. You don't get a clear indication of what exactly you are hearing, but you do hear some sort of large commotion occurring inside the interior of the dugout or the cave or the entrance that you are now assaulting. Again, it is just like this kind of jangled mess of shouts and dialogue and items and things and noises just kind of coming all at once. So there's nothing you can discern from it, but there's clearly motion taking place in there following the events of what is occurring outside. And then we would be down to Goblin's turn. So there's one in the web. It's the 14 is the save for that, sir?
I believe it is 15.
He would succeed. So that just makes it difficult to terrain. He's not restrained, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Brandon, I don't think you would be surprised when that occurs.
Nope.
This guy, if he runs around the web, can't make it. I don't think he can make it through the web. And if this guy, that's 20 feet, and then an extra. Okay, so then they would get to there and there. Alright, so we'll do the two attacking you currently, Brandon. What is your AC, sir?
16.
That is a miss and a hit. You would take 4 points of damage as one of them lands a blow as two goblins kind of descend upon you. Trying to decide what the ones on the cliff are going to aim at. I think the ones on the cliff probably going to shoot at Thomas, and the ones on the ground are going to try and shoot at Braynoon.
Did I have concealment or cover?
I'll give you half cover because you're, well, they are elevated. I probably won't give you cover because there is a reason they are up there. So it's 3 shots. What's your AC, Thomas?
12.
First one hits, second one hits, third one misses.
Is this the first damage Thomas is taking?
I think so. I mean, it is rather thematic that he is taking it probably for the saving of... Wow. Oof. That was 7 and 8. It's a total of 15.
Oh, fuck.
So, Thomas, as you cast out your web and you are kind of feeling a bit of a rush, this adrenaline dump of combat kind of kicking off, the usual, tactful mind of your intellect kind of taking hold, you don't really even regard the threat up above surrounding you, in front of you, as you are so ready for your group to just handle them as everything has been handled before 2 sharp, painful rushes of discomfort suddenly flood your chest, and you look down and you see 2 arrow shafts sticking out of your kind of, I don't know, rib cage area. These kind of dark maroon patches of your robe slowly growing thicker and wider as you have genuinely been shot twice, as a 3rd arrow sails over your head. Probably not incredibly ideal for you, sir. And then the 2 trying to shoot at Braynoon. You are being attacked by 2 goblins. I'll give you half cover. Yeah. It's a miss and a miss. So that would be, I think, all of them. So now we're down to Thomas, sir.
So, yeah, he is not happy about that. Not normal, but I'll begin with getting a little distance from him. I'm not sure how actually effective that would be, but it looks like these bushes look bigger than the other ones. And focusing on the one to the far left. That was one of the ones that shot me, I'm assuming hit me.
Sure, yep.
We'll see if we can pay him back with a magic missile.
If you deal 1 damage, he would be done.
Really? He's bloody?
Yeah.
That's the one that I shot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was heading out.
And,
I mean, it's also going to be the one that's going to be the longest for Quinn to get to, so it's still not a bad idea.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to cast I'll cast Toll the Dead on him.
Okay.
1d12 if he's damaged. Whatever. I'm going to roll it.
Oh,
Just-
definitely.
Yeah, there we go. 2.
Okay. I think it's appropriate. Oh, fuck, I need to stop doing that. 1 second. There we go. Given Thomas's grievous injury, also Sparkles can move or take his action on this turn if you want as well. And the resulting vengeance, how exactly does that look as you scamper away and then dispose of him?
So his rage that he was building up got tempered real quick, you know. So the first initial, like he ran away, almost was going to keep going, collected himself, turned around, and I'm imagining just pictured him smiling, you know, being happy about what he had done, and that rage kind of came back a little bit. He dug deep for the one spell that actually had more damage available to it if the person was damaged. So just wanting to focus every ounce that he had. That's what he's thinking. Outwardly, it just looks like he's absolutely fucked.
And Thomas, as you go scurrying away and then hiding behind the bush, you look back to the goblin that is more or less kind of like hopping with excitement as you see this like surge of his own victory kind of coming. It landing a blow on the demon that scared you all away, or scared them all away only 2 nights before you whip around and impart an energy that manifests itself in the arrowhead currently embedded in his abdomen as it begins to ring with this dull, muffled symphony of noises that quickly begins to grow to this grotesque squelching noise before the actual bolt that is plunged in his flesh rings so violently that his midsection kind of explodes outwards, and the center of this goblin falls to pieces before he just kind of falls to his knees and then collapses down to the side.
And then that'll be the end of my turn.
All right.
And I can't take any sort of action, but I definitely would be trying to make all these leaves stand in front of me to the best of their ability.
All right. We're up to you, Quinn.
So, am I aware? I don't think I can see.
You probably saw You can probably see Thomas from where you're at, maybe. I think that's reasonable enough. Or at least see the tips of his horns hiding behind a bush off in the distance.
All right, I'm gonna have to use my cunning action to dash to get here, but it's worth it. I think I'm attacking with advantage as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's full. Oh, actually, give me the stealth check to see if he is fully unaware of you. But I imagine he is.
22.
Yeah, you're good.
So, I need to memorize this bonus.
Make sure you have the right sheet open.
An 18.
That would do it.
And
similar to before.
It's gonna, yeah. I rolled pretty close to max damage, so assuming that's gonna do it. And kind of the same thing, only instead of moving back, partially because I don't even have that much movement left, I just want to bring him behind this shrub that I'm next to.
Okay. So you just kind of like pierce through him and then use the momentum just to swing him around almost like a dance partner before dumping him down on the ground behind you.
I think for this guy, it's through the neck, and then I can grab I can grab my sword on either side of his neck and
then like handling a cow by the horns or something.
Right.
Okay.
Just kind of turn him and down to the ground.
All right. Yeah, that would be very easily done. Thomas, you would also witness that occurring. As Brandon, you're probably a bit more focused on the things currently trying to murder you. But yeah, is that all your turn, sir?
That will do it.
All right, Brandon.
Let's just do simple fighter stuff. So yeah, I'm the one to the north of me. I'm just gonna treat him like a nail. That is a 22 to hit.
That misses. No, I'm kidding.
It's actually a gold dragon in disguise as a goblin. And that's going to be 13 damage, max damage.
Yeah, that would do him. Is there any particular way you want to seek?
No, like I said, just straight overhead swing, treating him like a nail, driving him.
Yep, his spine turns into an accordion, and you just. All right.
And yeah,
boy,
that'll end my turn.
Big boy.
Okay. So that is Braynoon. Again, Braynoon. Just Braynoon. Give me a perception check real quick.
5 again.
You still hear commotion coming from the dugout, though it is still unclear what that is.
Apparently that dice only rolls good for attack rolls, so I'm going to use my other d20 for skill check.
Okay. At this point, what was the DC for web? That's the. Oh, you gotta do a concentration check. You gotta do 2. You are muted, by the way.
Let's see, concentration check.
Since both damage was under 10, it's just a DC 10.
Yep.
So just 2 of them?
Yep.
That was a 12. Oh, what's my modifier? I guess it doesn't matter. It's a 12 and a 12.
Okay. So the web is still up. What is the DC for it?
15.
Okay, that's a fail and a fail. Okay, so they are both restrained. All right. And so then there's the singular goblin up on top. Does he notice his brother dying? No, he does not. I imagine we'll do this number, and we're moving this dead body over to the side to do that. Yeah, okay. So Brandon, you're getting hit 3 times, and the one up on the cliff is probably still going to try and shoot Thomas, but I will give you cover this time as you are scurried. So Brandon, what is your AC against Arthur?
16, and I believe 2 of those attacks have the flanking.
So the non-flanking one hits, the first flanking one misses, the second flanking one misses. All right, shows you how good flanking is. And he would do a total of 3 damage to you, sir, as you are now set upon by 3 goblins, but you've handled much worse rather recently. And the one attacking Thomas, your AC was 14, and you have cover.
My
AC is 12.
12, okay. He does miss with a natural 1. Yeah, that's rough. I think that is all of them. So we're back down to you, Thomas, as an arrow sails wildly over your head and off into the glade behind you.
I mean, as the arrow is converging, he's casting magic missile back at him.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good old Western shootout here.
Yep.
We need like crates full of like random assortments of vegetables, like stalls that fall apart. A random wagon just rolling through town.
12.
You could have one of the horses.
12
through.
damage?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that would do it. Alright. Anything else on your turn, sir?
It's probably not a horrible time at this point to cast Mage Armor.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you cast Mage Armor?
2 spells in one turn?
Magic Missile is the first level. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. What am I?
Man, Thomas, go back to school.
It's almost dead, all right?
No, I would like to think he's trying to cast Mage Armor without realizing he can.
I think you meant to say that you had cast it before the combat started and just had your mic muted.
I'm sorry, what? You're not coming through, James.
Yeah, so
But-
he's just going to get as deep into those bushes as he can at this point.
All right. Quinn, as you dispose of your second combatant, you look over to the third that was probably your next target as he is bombarded by arcane energy to the point where he is thrown to the ground and clearly lifeless. You are able to see Braynoon is currently wildly fending off 3. I imagine you also have enough of a vantage point to see the 2 goblins that have raced out of the little dugout are trying to crawl through Thomas's webbing but finding themselves stuck in the middle of it.
And so it is my turn.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. I got this big black splitch on.
Yeah,
on here.
that's just
Is
like
that-
solid ground for you.
Okay.
But as far as battle maps work, yeah.
no more goblins up here.
No.
Okay. So I am going to stay where I am at. I wish I could remember what the distance measuring tool for Roll20 was.
You are within, at maximum, 55 feet of the 3 goblins surrounding.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
40. Yep.
So I'm going to drop my rapier on the ground, take my bow off my back, and shoot it at, let's just say, the one on Braynoon's east.
Okay.
And that will be... an 18 to hit
That would hit.
or 11.
That would do him.
And then I will hide.
Okay.
And that's a 22.
Okay. I'm assuming using that brush and the cliff kind of both in tandem.
Right.
All right.
Up, bam, and then back down.
So Brandon, as you crush one and then you're set upon and you're fending them all off, you're like currently kind of parrying blows as the one up to your east is about to raise his sword up in another slash before he only gets like halfway through the motion before an arrow suddenly appears through his face and he falls to the ground. You just get like the quickest blur of Quinn's silhouette ducking away from the cliff. That's the last thing you see before he hides, as it is now your turn, sir.
So since that's the one I intended to attack, we'll continue that. I'm just going to swing the attack around 180. Baseball swing on the one on the west.
Okay.
It's only a 15 to hit.
That hits.
Okay. For 11 damage.
That would do him. And we'll put him there for thematic sake.
And boring fighter stuff. End my turn.
All right. Then we were down. Okay. Brandon, give you a perception check.
Hey, that's an 18 on the die. So that is a 20 total.
All right. From the entrance that you are currently nearby, perhaps now that there are less goblins currently bombarding you with very close proximity audio, you are able to begin to decipher some of the noises coming from the underground terrain to your north. There is obviously goblins speak that you do not understand, but there is also what you can recognize as the vague or sparse amount of common being used, a single word here and there. It is hard to make out exactly what the words are, but you are able to make out somewhat precisely Benjamin's tone or demeanor. Again, not words, not sentences or callouts or anything of that manner, but just the demeanor of his voice, the energy of his voice, I suppose. But it is clearly either muffled from distance or geography or from some other means. It is a bit garbled, but it is distinctly different from what else you were able to hear. But all right. Brings us to Goblin turn, where... They're gonna try and break free. Nope. And yes, he's gonna break free, which is his action, and then try to run. The one in front of you, Braynoon. Yep, he's gonna try and run. Yep, probably same direction. Attack opportunity.
Do I?
Yep.
Yes, thank you. That is another 15 to hit.
That would hit.
For 12 damage.
Yep, he's not making it. Put him there. The one that's restrained can't do literally anything. Except cower in fear. Yeah, I think that's their turn. Thomas.
I will walk from this bush to this one. See. And I'll cast Firebolt at the goblin in the that's restrained. I don't care about the one running away.
Okay.
Let's see. 16 to hit.
Yeah, that would hit.
1d10. So that is 7 damage.
That would do it. As he catches a firebolt directly in the mouth, as he is screaming wildly, trying to free himself from the webbing, and finds that that is the last breath of hot air that he'll ever inhale. That's your turn, sir?
Yeah, that's all I can do.
So at this time, it is Quinn's turn. What is your intention, sir?
We have specific instructions to kill all goblins. So I care about the one that's running away. So I want to move such as to get a vantage on him with my short bow. Somewhere right in here will do it.
That's 5 gold running away.
And let me double check the range on the short bow. Oh yeah, 80 feet. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye, goblin. All right. That is a 24 and 12. I'm sorry,
Okay.
15.
Yeah, that'd do it. So, with Quinn, you landing your shot, and that goblin falling to the ground dead, Brandon, you kind of giving one last glance around to make sure that nothing else is going on. Combat seemingly comes to a close. What is the party's initial action afterwards?
I hide again. 19.
Okay.
I start crying, probably.
If I hear you crying, like I sort of pop my head up with this really confused face, and then like put my finger to my lips, like.
Oh, then you're gonna be pissed at what I do. Yeah, I move to like.
It's not really about
here.
stealth. It's about
I know.
dignity.
I'm gonna move to there, and I'm just gonna start beating the ground with my warhammer, making as much noise as I can.
Thomas, are you still holding up your web?
No reason to let it drop at this point. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, hold on. Let me make sure it's not one of those that seems like it lasts a long time, but just because it's combat.
I think it's a minute, right?
It is up to 1 hour. It's still there.
Okay. So Braynoon, as all of your enemies seem to fall around you, and you still hear that commotion going on in front of you, your allies whimpering and hiding as you stride in front of the entrance, you begin banging your makeshift war drum in the moment. And in response, you hear a very mangled, very heavily accented, kind of rough spoken common, kind of echoing from the depths that you were currently facing. Just, back! Back!
Can I assume, my assumption would be this is Big Z that I'm hearing. Not that he probably fully understands common, but I'll just respond back, I see you're still scared of me, as I continue to drum on the ground.
As you hammer away a few more times, there is clearly some sort of moment of reflection before you begin to hear the pained and whimpering cries of what you could assume to be Sven. These kind of strained, piercing, wailing noises drifting from the entrance that you were still facing before you hear the voice again. Back! Back! Or dead!
I'm going to look to my companions.
Would drop the web. I would drop the web upon hearing that and start heading towards the entrance.
Okay. As soon as the web drops, I'm charging in that, understanding that I'm going to have to crawl through a tunnel, but...
So, even you being of a shorter stature, you probably have to get almost fully on your hands and knees, or to the point where you were kind of supporting yourself on your hands as you go in, but that is your intention, is to go in?
Yep.
Okay, let me, fuck. Can I get rid of this fucking web? The web's not there. It always curses me.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know how to put stuff on here either.
So, Brandon, you're going in first. Thomas, are you following? Quinn, are you doing anything?
Not yet.
Okay.
I feel like
Sounds about right.
Yeah, something's gonna shake out here. I want to see what's what first.
Okay. So, Brandon, as you get to there, and Thomas, I assume you will be there. And let me make sure this is. Yep, there we go.
As soon as I can see him and I can cast a spell, let me know.
Okay. To help give you guys some description. Brandon, as you are on your hands and knees and you have to go around this kind of tight bend as you move into the actual earth, you get just around the corner, still somewhat semi-prone, I suppose, before you get a somewhat clear image of what you are looking at. It is a rather compact and tight, clearly hand-dug hole or cavern or room, I guess you could describe it as. It is maybe only at most 6 or 7 feet tall, as Big Z's ears are like currently scraping the top of the ceiling. Looking first at him, which we'll get to, he is dominating the central space with Sven kind of clung to his front. Around the exterior, you see what appears to be again this strange collection of bedding or nesting, various bits of cloth and fabric and wood, and attempts at structure, holding what look like tiny, grotesque, somewhat malformed goblinoid creatures. They are, again, perhaps maybe a foot and a half tall, as they're all kind of cuddled in various bits of this nest, or hiding behind rocks, or peering over one another. There is perhaps maybe 20 of them in this small space, all kind of scurried away to the edge, trying to hide, though there is not much of a space to hide. On the far side of the room from you, Go ahead and bring that down. You would see the familiar face of Lindis kind of behind both Big Z and Sven. She has been stripped of everything. Her armor somewhat kind of strewn about the place, as you kind of see. It's somewhat new, shiny material versus the kind of dingy collection that is currently in here. She is gagged and bound and kind of thrown into one of the nest locations to the far north. There are a few of the kind of baby goblins somewhat like standing over her, using like her arm to hide behind. Just, again, trying to find any way to not be in line of sight. The more dominating image that you are presented with is Big Z, the large, muscular, absolutely monolithic goblin creature, is stood behind Sven, the dragon kind you were familiar with, completely barren of any of his usual silks or fineries. His scaly figure is presented to you, and you can almost instantly identify that both of his legs have been broken at the knees. They are bent the wrong direction and not supporting him in the slightest, as Big C has taken what you could basically assume to be maybe part of a blade, or what used to be part of a blade, and stuck it between Sven's lower and upper jaw, kind of pulling it back against the, I guess, edge of his maw, his dragon-kind teeth kind of gripping the blade in an attempt to try to stop it from biting in. Big Z's kind of grinning from behind Sven's features as you see that his face has been marred and broken and battered. The end of his snout kind of crooked in one direction has clearly been broken. And as you are shown or appear around the corner, he would very clearly look at you and go, "Back or dead!" And now, we'll hop back to Sven.
Not a great predicament.
So,
Welcome back to the game, Seth.
Sven, the last memory that you have before you are cast into darkness is the unconscious face of Lindis beneath you, goblins setting down upon you, and then this very sharp, distinct pain in your rib before you crumple down to the earth, assuming that this is perhaps the last moment on Talora. You wake up next, very disorientated about what time of day it is or what location you are currently in. Your eyes begin to slowly work their way open, your entire body kind of pulsating with this very relentless, stubborn pain. As you begin scanning the immediate area around you, you quickly try to work through the kind of sluggish mind you have to work with at this time, as you can recognize the imagery of the glade around you, and then this little bit of panic kind of gripping your heart as the goblinoid creatures that set upon you are scampering in your vision. It appears that you are in this makeshift campsite of some extent. It's about the gist of what you can gather. Your hands are bound behind you, your legs are bound at the ankles, there is a gag currently in your mouth, and staring through this kind of small flickering flame, you see Linsa is on the other side of the camp in a very similar state. The wound that she sustained to her shoulder is still bleeding, though it is, I guess, clear, or I guess you can assume that the goblins have attempted to give her some sort of medical treatment, as a few bandages and bits of cloth have kind of been stamped or strapped or pressed onto the wound itself. She appears to have either been awake for quite some time or arose in it around the same time as you, and she is clearly making eye contact with you as you come to.
So as I recall, I have a lovely broken rib in there, so probably feeling that tickle in my lung. Sven gives a couple of coughs, trying to clear some of the pain, and making eye contact with her, he would immediately just start winking. He's winking, just.
Lindis, who, there is the slightest hint of, I guess, hope, or maybe a glimmer of yeah, hope, I suppose is the right term to use, as she sees you coming to, probably assuming that you might have died during this venture or will die before you awake. It very quickly fades, however, as your winking kind of causes her to cast her eyes around, trying to indicate to take in the scene around you before she returns eye contact once more and tries to kind of silently convey the seriousness of what is going on and this kind of vulnerable despair or fear taking her over versus the kind of stoic, self-righteous woman you had grown to know during your travels. There would be a moment where your eyesight or eye line is kind of interrupted as a goblin appears to kind of stand over her. Her eyes kind of flicker up, and you see this mask of like grim determination of trying to still showcase that stoicism slipping over her features as she looks up at him with this kind of angry scowl on her face before he just quickly delivers a swift kick to her ribs. There is this like grunt of pain coming out of her as he then kind of chuckles and kind of dances a few steps away, a few of the other goblins around him kind of slapping him on the back, and it's almost kind of like camaraderie, like, oh yeah, good job, bro. Before she would bring her eyes back down to you, and there's just this like acceptance of not being in a grand situation.
Yeah, how many are surrounding us here?
Give me perception disadvantage.
Perception. Limited, right? 11.
Okay. Due to your limited amount of mobility and the confusion of the scene and your current state, you can't really feel confident in assessing their numbers, but to the best of your ability, it's somewhere between like 8 and 16, kind of losing track of one after the other, as it is kind of evening time, more or less, and you're just going by vague silhouettes kind of moving around the fire, so that's about your summary.
Okay. And she's on the other side of the campsite. Okay. Yeah, you know, she's kind of like the only hope he's got at potentially getting out of here. I think Sven would probably start to, like, inchworm. Start trying to move a little bit more towards her direction. He's already bound and gagged there, so I'm not too worried about him trying to do much to me.
Give me stealth with disadvantage.
My favorite. It is a 14.
Okay, Jesus. As you begin to kind of wiggle, start like using your shoulder to move, like somewhat thankful that your broken rib is on the side that you're not currently leaned on, you make it maybe 6 or 7 inches across this 30-foot gap, which is not too far, before there is a sudden kind of violent thrashing to your head before you realize you've been kicked kind of from behind, the various assortment of miscellaneous bobbits between your horns kind of jangling ever so slightly as your nose is kind of dug down into the dirt, and before you can really try to either move or change the situation or even address the individual that just attacked you, you are set upon by a countless amount of goblins, more kicks, punches, grabs, slaps, sharp bits of pain that you assume are actual weapons digging into your skin, hit you to the point until one lucky or unlucky goblin lands a blow on your broken rib and you feel a very sharp pain before the stimulation forces you to pass out once again. Not ideal. Next.
A little tickle in the lungs there.
As you are left to reside in this kind of black void for quite some time, lots of opportunity to reflect on one's life and life choices, you begin to feel that pull back to reality in the physical plane once again, as you find yourself opening your eyes to this much dimmer, cramper, kind of moist, damp, interior dirt room, you begin to kind of, again, do the same process as before, glancing around, trying to see what is happening. And at first, you just see maybe 20 or 30 pairs of glinting eyes in the darkness staring out back at you, almost kind of like stars in the night sky. As you slowly begin to try and decipher this image, you see a very large handful of goblin offspring, again, kind of cowering or perching or grabbing onto rocks and stones in this dirt room, looking at you with this mixture of curiosity and intrigue. They're all kind of whispering amongst one another, using this very rough, kind of crude goblin speak. Some of them just even like babbling and slapping at one another to initiate some sort of communication between them. You would again see Lindis. This time she is not conscious, as far as you are aware, as she looks like she has received quite the brutal thrashing and has been kind of thrown almost off to the side, kind of like on her left side, facing down towards this, again, somewhat like nesting material. You are not allowed to linger for long, I suppose, or analyze for long before you begin to hear this noise off to your left. Kind of turning your head to the side, you see goblin after goblin kind of pushing their way through this small hole into the room before a large and terrifying sight of a goblin that is almost twice the size of a normal goblinoid creature kind of shoulders his way through the cramped space and then begins to fully erect himself in the still somewhat small interior. He would look over at Lindis, and again there is conversation kind of going on between him and the other goblins, before he then turns his attention to you, and there is some of that same curiosity on his features as he gives you a quick once-over. Speak. Kind of comes down and grabs the gag very abruptly, which is just appears to be some sort of fabric or leather or something kind of jammed in your mouth and strapped behind, and just wrenches it free. You can see the actual like definition of his bulging arms kind of define themselves even fiercer before the material is ripped, and he casts it down to the side, and then he grabs your throat, kind of giving you a little firm shake, your head and brain kind of bouncing around for a moment. Speak!
What can I do for you?
What you?
What?
What? You! And then he just slaps you across the face, and the blow is hard enough that your vision, your sense of direction is kind of cast into obscurity for a moment, and there is a now fresh and strong, vibrant pain of your snout being shoved the wrong direction too far, a distinct pop, leaving the tip of your nose broken as you are coming back to reality, you know, ethereal stars dancing around your skull as you meet Bigsy's gaze once again.
I am dragon kind.
No dragon.
But dragon kind.
He kind of looks at more or less, I guess, his henchman or maybe his right-hand man to some extent, and they begin to speak in a dialect that you were unfamiliar with. Their, as far as you can tell, their communication or their discourse being somewhat heated before very suddenly and violently Bigsy slaps the goblin to his side, and there is this kind of shouting cry of almost merriment, I suppose, as Bigsy goes to turn, appearing to basically disregard you entirely, and then starts heading in the direction of Lindis as the, I guess, shifting of attention of the room is fallen upon her unconscious state.
No. Talk to me.
As Bigsy gets like 2 or 3 strides away, almost clearing the distance, he pauses, and you see him like twisting his face back over his shoulder, this annoyance but also kind of smug smirk kind of I don't know, exuding across his goblin features. And then he whirls around in this, again, display of grace, ferocity, and kind of relentless violence. It is clear that his movements are practiced and almost perfected to an art form, but it is put forth without any sort of mercy that someone with this amount of grace might carry. And his leg, which is perhaps about the same size as your own, comes striking down at your own, his foot catching your knee, and there's a sudden buckle, a sharp crack before this large rush of, again, excruciating pain is shot through your body as you watch your leg invert the wrong direction, your lower part kind of flopping up somewhat uselessly before landing on the ground, non-responsive.
I'm gonna try and make this noise, and I'm hoping it's not sexual, but...
As, you seem to draw the attention back upon yourself, it might be fair to say that the broken leg is perhaps the least of your worries, as the following hours are somewhat horrific, to the point where we will softly fade to gray, as Sven is treated unkindly in a various spectrum of ways by both Big Z and the goblins in the room. It does achieve more or less what supposedly Sven was trying to do, as Lindis remains mainly untouched except for the various pokes and prods of kind of curious goblin babies just like almost looking over at her as like some sort of strange toy that's been brought back. You eventually, perhaps somewhat thankfully, find your way slipping back into unconsciousness once more, kind of almost accepting this blackness versus the scene you were currently living, before you are dragged yet again from the void, and you are almost at this point bitter about finding your senses returning to you, about seeing this scene being presented to your eyes. There is this pit in the bottom of your heart that won't budge, won't move, won't shift away, as you spy what is going on around you. You see Linda still somewhat undisturbed on the other side of the room, and you see Big Z standing again, dominating the small space, as sounds of combat appear to be going on outside. Cries, shouts, various twangs of crossbows and bowstrings. You see the few goblins still remaining in the room dashing outside before your return to reality is graced with yet another crunch and another broken leg, as Big Z permanently confirms that you are not going to go anywhere before grabbing you up off the ground, latching your back to his chest, and then placing a sharp implement between your teeth. He calls out several times, though there is no answer past the kind of dark hole you are left looking at. There is more commotion of violence and squelching gore going on before eventually that dies down, and you hear a thumping, a low, rhythmic trembling of the earth before the familiar and I guess somewhat igniting, hopeful tone of Braynoon drifts into the small cell that you have been confined to. Big Z kind of like pulling the knife somewhat farther back against your skin as he screams in your ear, bellowing out to your companion that you cannot see. There is a brief exchange that you heard prior before Braynoon begins to crawl forward, and as you hear the rocks kind of shifting out of place and his body disturbing the earth to get his frame through, Big Z lifts you entirely off of your own legs, off of your own weight, and resting the majority of it on this sharp, but not sharp enough to really cut blade. It is chipped and dented and broken and somewhat rusted. As Braynoon, you are met eye to eye with your brethren, Thomas following quickly behind you, Quinn still outside. Big Z looks you in the eye and goes, "Back! Or dead!" and then pulls harder on the knife as Sven is left just kind of lifelessly squirming in his grasp.
So I can't speak for Thomas. I'm just going to calmly crawl out of the hole, just kind of like brush dirt off of me.
And to get Thomas out,
right,
or to get Brandon out, Thomas would probably have to back up.
Well, I was in front of him, so like I'm not going out. I'm going in. Yeah, I'm not going back. I'm not listening to him.
Okay. If you go to move forward, he pulls back enough that you begin to see parts of Sven's flesh being sliced, and a kind of concerning sound of a pop of perhaps his lower jaw disconnecting from his upper jaw, as he is very clearly making it, if you move forward, he's going to kill Sven.
I mean, I'm moving forward.
At that point, I'm going to try and give them an opportunity. And I think Sven, after all of the abuse, makes eye contact with Braynoon as he's coming forward and around the blade. I am Akubola. And just try and use his fire breath on the blade. Hopefully you are not within 15 feet. I'm so sorry.
I think he's out of range, and either way, I think I would work around him.
Just try and give a good blast of fire in front.
Okay. As Sven, you summon up the heat, the air, the visceral energy of dragon kind from your lungs, pushing it up and through your broken body, and feeling it almost fail in your neck as you then use the last kind of lingering essence in your heart to shove it further, to blast it out, as both your words and your fiery breath go erupting from your maw that has been mistreated quite severely, is enough to cause Big Z's hand to kind of like move away from the right side of the blade. But there is this like instinctual jerking back of him almost trying to get away from the fire that causes the left arm that is still gripping it to cleanly and harshly drag through the side of your skull. It severs basically at the jawline, back about halfway before it gets caught on something, and he just throws you off to the side as his right hand is still singed. It is enough to throw him off balance and cause him to curse out in pain, though you are already feeling your essence, your soul, your awareness draining from you as the left side of your face is now left broken and shattered and just gushing out very vital organs. Braynoon, as you watch Sven, and Thomas, I imagine you as you are watching in horror from behind, go sailing to the ground where nothing can support him as he lands with a tremendous thud, the appearing to slumber form of Lindis suddenly leaps from behind, and she is wielding one of the goblin children in hand, seeming to take this opportunity as her chance to act. And as Big Z is seemingly distracted, Lindis gets to her feet, I'm using the wrong tool, and attempts to clock him over the head with a child. Threw it off my desk. Alright, Lindis.
The weirdest improvised weapon I've ever seen.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what weapon she would use. Oh my god. You rolled a natural 20, no fucking shot. Okay. Okay. Let me do a little bit of organization here. I guess, and we'll say that child probably doesn't make it. So Braynoon, as Sven's quickly dying form hits the ground, and you are feeling yourself like ready to act, ready to move, ready to charge forward as you intended, Lindis finds her feet, though she appears to be somewhat wobbly. There is this like rage-filled, grim determination taking over her expression as the goblin in her hand is flailing wildly, trying to get out of her grip before she brings it in an upward strike, kind of catching Big Z under his jaw, and there is this loud smacking noise as his head is kind of thrown back, the goblin baby's head crumpling under the force as its lifeless corpse is now being wielded as this kind of bludgeon as she tries to just continue to beat at Big Z, as we will fall back into initiative order, picking up with Quinn. Though you are, I imagine, not really fully aware of what is going on.
I think under the circumstances, I just have to wait.
Yeah.
They know that I'm up here, so I'm just gonna ready an action to shoot at a goblinoid.
So Brainoon.
So yeah, my intention is to close the gap between myself and Big Z if possible, but I'm assuming this tunnel is difficult terrain.
I would say that next 5 feet is probably difficult terrain, so you could probably still make it to him in this turn.
Okay, in that case, no, I have to be on. That is what I'm gonna do. And yeah, I just come out swinging.
And you would have flanking on him.
Oh yeah. Is that the indirect flanking that's like only
I'll give you opposite flanking, because...
Okay.
Yeah.
I forget. Does that mean advantage? I can't. Okay, that's what I thought. So that is a 11 plus 7, 19 to hit.
That would hit.
No, 18 to hit. I can math.
That would hit.
And that is a 10 on the D10, so 13 damage.
All right. You actually managed to bloody him with Lindis's attack. Wonderful. As he is whipping around, still blade in hand, dripping rather copiously with Sven's blood, he is trying to fend off Lindis, who is flailing at him with this unrelenting fury, this untapped, just like craze in her eyes, as she doesn't care how mangled and deformed this child in her hands is, as she just continues to use it to bash over at him. He is more concerned trying to fend off this crazed woman, as you are allowed the opportunity to race forward and land your blow, kind of catching him right on the shoulder blade. You hearing a, again, rather concerning clunk coming from the individual, though thankfully it is now on your opponent, as he lets out this kind of bellowing pain. But that would be your turn, sir.
Would you allow me, as a combination of my bonus action plus my moving up, to summon my hand axe to my hand and toss it toward Lindis? Like, not to her, like I'm not trying to hand it to her, but just like get it to a place where she could get it.
I think that's fair. Like, as you were like kind of getting up from the like crouch position, if you like summon it and slide it across the ground, I think that's fine. Okay.
Okay. I just want her to have, you know, an actual weapon possibility, but yeah, then that'll be my turn.
It would then be Big Z's turn, though he finds himself still so set upon by both Lindis and the pain in his right hand, which he clearly is not used to being in this disadvantageous position, and the crack on his shoulder blade. He is more or less kind of stunned in this, like, shocking moment of realizing how overwhelmed he truly is. And we come down to Thomas. No, wait, sorry. Goblin's turn, where, Brainoon, you would be set upon by a large number of, I'm going to move you a little bit, Sven, crazed goblin children. What is your AC, sir?
16.
Oh, wow, one actually hits. You take 1 damage as about 10 or so of these creatures set upon you. They are lashing at your legs, grabbing at your arms, poking at you with splinters and bits of wood that they have collected. A small handful goes up towards Lindis and tries to lash out at her. She sustains an injury, though it seems to be, again, rather minor, as these goblins are not developed enough to really sink deep any sort of blow they manage, but they are coming at you with the same fury that their more grown-up brethren hold. And now we are to Thomas.
Just I'll step forward, about to render aid to Sven, but then looking at the goblin and just I'll just ask him, if he's ready to be held like he held Sven, and cast what is it? Hold person. And he'll roll an 11 on that. So wisdom save of 15.
Okay. What does hold person do, sir?
No, I'm pretty sure it's...
There we go.
Yeah. Paralyzed, that's right. That's
Paralyzed.
the condition.
At the end of each of its turns. Okay, good to know. It probably doesn't manifest in a different physical appearance, as he is practically almost paralyzed by being overwhelmed at this point, but now he's literally paralyzed in this kind of stasis of being just unable to figure out what to do. Yeah.
And then I'll, with the goblin children being close, I don't want them to do any more damage to Sven, so I will just put myself on top of Sven.
All right. Again, back up to Quinn, but I'm assuming.
Yeah, just holding with my bow at the ready, kind of looking out, making sure that there's no goblins outside that are returning from foraging or something.
Mm-hmm. Lindis will try it again to hit Big Z.
She does have advantage on paralyzed creatures.
Well, I should
And
probably
any
pick
attack
up,
that hits within 5 feet is a...
Okay. Wait, so she picks up the hatchet, or the hand axe. What's the hand axe stats?
There we go. 1d6 damage.
Okay, 1d6. She gets an advantage. And is it an automatic crit against paralyzed?
Any attack that hits the creature is a critical hit if the attacker is within the 5 feet.
Okay. So that would be so wonderful.
It's also strength-based attack roll, if that matters.
Yep. Okay, let's see. All right. Man, it's so rare that I get these moments. I love D&D. Braynoon and Thomas, as you are quickly trying to save this scene or just act on instinct, Lindis is doing very much the same, as she is kind of fending off the nuisance to her left. Big Z turns to her, looks as if he is about intent on lashing out at her before Thomas freezes him in place, and as Lindis stares up and sees the genuine fear filling his eyes, this look of absolutely no hope left in this world, she crouches down quick and deft and snatches the hand axe from the ground that Braynoon skidded across, holding it with this incredible intent, the knuckles white, as she is strangling the wood of the implement before she leaps slightly upwards to try and gain the same height advantage of this creature she is facing, and brings the blade down into his skull. It lands cleanly in the center, this loud crack, followed by this wet, squelching splurt as a large amount of his brains go cascading, much like parting of the Red Sea, between the blade as she drives it further down, bringing his actual paralyzed form lower to the extent that she is fighting the magical paralysis that holds him in place, his muscles and bone kind of breaking and stumbling in this strange prison that he finds himself in, before she's just holding all of her weight upon this new handle she has crafted, and Big Z is crumpling in place in real time as Thomas, you hold him from falling completely to his knees until the life drains from his eyes, his features coated in his own black, thick blood, and Big Z is slain. It is fair enough to say, and easy enough to explain, that the Goblin Children do not have an AC, and they have an HP of 0.01. So I imagine if the party is intent on, and Lindis would certainly see to this, if not you all, would start demolishing the goblin children currently surrounding you all.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, they're going to be an annoyance in trying to do anything else.
Mm-hmm. I will say that Thomas, as you are stood over Sven, again, all of this happening incredibly fast, you are looking down at your friend, his face clearly beyond repair, one of his eyes already kind of slipping out of its socket and into the wound that has been created, but the one that is still residing in its place meets yours. There is this brief moment where you exchange a glance as his tongue is kind of uselessly being dragged out of his mouth, where you can impart one final look with your companion as Elindis and Brainoon begin to descend upon the creatures around you.
We'll get you out of here. You're gonna be okay. And I don't know, am I even capable of moving him?
You could try.
Okay.
Give me athletics check.
Well, I think as you say that, Sven's gonna hack up some blood, of course. That broken rib is not doing anything good for his lungs. And you're just gonna get a wink. Just a slow, because the other eye's gone, a slow wink.
I'm gonna just work as best as I can. That was a 4, so yeah.
So in this,
with whatever I can do, I'm gonna start trying to stabilize him if it's possible.
We all do have healers kits.
Yeah. As this strange scene begins to take place, Brainoon, you are crushing the residual screams of these goblins as Elindis is kind of lost in this fury that she is not looking to come out of anytime soon. Thomas, you are crouched over Sven as he gives you his kind of final look, his final wink, his departing presence to you as you try and move him, try and even just roll him over onto his side or in a more comfortable position, but your physical strength proves to be so shallow in this moment, whether it is emotion or distraction or just the lack of attention you've put on your strength. You just can't. There's this stubborn, unbreakable wall that you cannot break, and this bitterness kind of filling your mouth as you are watching Sven just leave, as you are gripping onto his body, trying to move him, trying desperately, as Sven clearly passes.
He's gone.
Gone.
And I'm aware of that. Are there any goblins left?
Probably about the same time, Brainoon and Lindis would both be, and Lindis would look up, her majority of her body covered in black blood, with a lot of her face being splattered in it. Brainoon probably pretty close to the same. Lindis would look over at you, Brainoon, for a moment before she just almost robotically goes to move back over to Big Z and begins to just continually beat at his corpse with the weapon that you have provided her.
As she starts to do that, I would summon the hand axe out of her hand and back to me. Like, it's probably not going to stop her, but she's not going to use my weapon for it.
She would just pick up the blade that dispatched Sven and then continue her work.
I'll pick up where she left off with, I'll just start firebolting. There's no limit to that.
So, Brainoon.
I'm gonna crawl back out of the cave, just because. Yeah, like he gets it. He'll be outside when they're ready to leave. Quinn has no idea what's happening.
Would you attempt to move Sven's corpse in any way?
Probably not, only because I'm not sure how Thomas would react to that.
Okay.
And so, like, I'll kneel down, I'll do a check and everything, but crawl my way back out.
So, Brandon, as you leave, and Thomas, you are left with Lindis, you two spend a fair amount of time venting your frustration, I guess is the light way of putting it. There is probably not enough words in the English language to describe how thorough you two are at removing this individual from reality. As perhaps about 5 minutes pass or 10 minutes pass, it's also somewhat hard to discern time during this unleashing of emotion. Lindis's final blow kind of lands with this muted thud. The blade that had killed Sven in her hand, she's even kind of sliced her own hand up by wielding it in such a vicious manner. She looks down at this black crud that you all have created, and there is these two thin, clean lines on her cheeks where tears have kind of pushed away the gore and the blood and the guts of Big Z, leaving just the smallest hint of the elven woman underneath. She would look up at you, obviously her eyes quite reddened, her tears still actively coming, as there's no words that come from her lips, but she just locks her eyes and her gaze into you with this, I guess, attempt at silent understanding, or just being overall overwhelmed, just breathing heavily after the rather physical exertion she has just put out, trying to come to terms with it all.
Thomas has nothing to say. Yeah, every time he starts releasing it, like every time he stops and then looks down and sees Sven again, beyond any help, it doesn't matter if it's a goblin kid or the leftover remains of Z. He's there, and he's not gonna quit. I don't know what continued use of Firebolt would do. Like if it has any effect on
maybe on, numbing the tips of your fingers, or like something.
But whatever the long-term effects of that are, unless he's stopped, it'll be in the dozens.
So Brandon and Quinn, as you can hear this scene taking place, Brandon, I guess, being a bit more in the loop of what is occurring, do you all have any sort of interaction during this time?
Yeah, when he comes out, I sort of lower the bow and kind of straighten up and say, "What's the situation?"
I would make eye contact with Quinn and just shake my head. And then I'm going to go about collecting goblin ears.
I have been in a place like this before, with that sort of bad news or mission didn't go quite like everybody hoped. And I'll climb down from there and sort of follow kind of off Braden's Brainoon off Brainoon's what would the term be? I don't know, just sort of flanking. Yeah, and after the first goblin, I'll ask, were we too late? Did we take too long?
I have a feeling that what happened was going to happen regardless.
He had a hostage.
Sven gave us an opening.
There wasn't anything we could do for him.
He was gone by the time I could get to him. That's all I know.
I just sort of sigh and start working my way around the other side, getting goblin ears.
So as you two continue the diligence of adventuring outside, Thomas, you would look across at Lindis as you two have kind of, I guess, fallen into this somewhat understandable silence before she would push herself back up, getting off of her hands and knees where she had been so viciously attacking the remains of Z. There's a little bit of like wobble and uncertainty in her step as she kind of stands back up for the first time in quite some time before she more or less kind of like half stumbles across a small space, landing on her knees again beside Sven, reaching down and grabbing kind of, I guess, how you would almost cup someone's like cheeks, but obviously one side of his face being somewhat removed, and as tenderly as she can, her own fatigue and muscles and kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Confusion, emotional burden plaguing her movements, would reach down to very tenderly kiss the top of his head before looking back over at you and, we have to move him.
Help me. I'm not strong.
She would like cradle kind of his shoulder and head as you presumably take the other end and begin to try and get him through the kind of small space back outside.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you bring Sven back into the open air, the Talora as a whole, you'd see that even though his scales have been marred and stained and soaked in his blood and others, there is that sheen, that glint off of the golden body that he no longer resides in. It kind of casts this somewhat dour, glistening image across the small space as Braynoon and Quinn, I'm assuming you're more or less finishing up on your task you had set to. You all kind of coming together as he is freed from the depths of the goblin's hole. Lindis would not make any motion to kind of take charge or give any sort of direction as she's still kind of on her knees, resting Sven's head in her lap, just kind of staring down at him, clearly lost in thought or just processing what has occurred, kind of allowing you all to do as you will.
I'm just kind of standing off to the side. I'm fully following Thomas. My mic's acting weird again. I'm following Thomas's lead on this just because I don't know enough about Sven's culture, about what would be disrespectful, what would be... So he's just kind of waiting for any sort of instruction or decision to be made.
Gwen or Thomas, you doing anything? as
I
you, yep.
I think that, back out in the open, and seeing him clearly, I think Thomas just snaps and starts yelling at Sven and drops down and starts like punching at his legs and just shaking him.
I
You-
don't let that go on for long before I kind of try to take him
Right.
under his arms and say,
Like,
all right.
and
Thomas, as
then,
you are,
yeah, at that point, then it goes from that to you're close, you'll do, and now I'm sobbing on your shoulder, Quinn.
So I'm clearly at a loss, but also just sort of let it go on for as long as it will.
Thomas, as you kind of pull yourself into Quinn, and Quinn, you were left in this very emotional realm that you have to try and traverse, I suppose. You would watch as Mr. Sparkles kind of scampers past Thomas, kind of looking back up at him in a little bit of confusion before he steps very gingerly up to Sven, kind of like sniffing the air and then just kind of resting his cheek down against more or less like the upper torso area of Sven's remains. And there is this, I guess, motion that most of you could perhaps understand of him like trying to get his attention, trying to nudge him, trying to like get some sort of reaction before Mr. Sparkles eventually kind of looks back up at Thomas and then kind of slowly slinks under his robes and then up into the sleeve that he usually resides in. Brandon, as you are stood off to the side and Thomas kind of releases his build up, Lindis would finally kind of lift her gaze over to you, and then this kind of empty tone just, I imagine everyone else is dead.
There is clearly not a chuckle of like actual laughter, like enjoyment, but it is a chuckle of judgment as yeah, their corpses are back with the wagons.
Just kind of accepting everything. It's pretty easy to read what's going on, as she is probably easily in the worst position of her life she has ever been in. And just kind of goes back to silence.
As I'm sort of holding Thomas while he's getting it all out, like normally my face would be like a sort of almost an expression that he has like practiced practically, but that's starting to falter while Thomas just continues to break down. And I'll look around for Lindis and say, I'm really glad that we got here before anything even worse could happen to you.
She would look up at your addressing her, and then almost as like an answer within itself, looks down to Sven and then back up at you, and he took it for me, I suppose.
Once we get cleaned up, get a night's sleep, and get back to Messidore, remember that when it's time to explain whose fault this was.
I know.
Hearing that, Braynoon is going to walk off. He'll make a mention of like going to get the horses or something like that under his breath. But somewhere off in the distance, you just hear the crack of something hitting a tree. And then probably, I don't know how far it is, but in a time that is longer than that should have taken to return.
So I think it's probably safe to assume that the group kind of gather themselves, collect Sven, find their way mounted, and on their way back towards the main road.
Probably not in any sort of huge rush, but...
Mm-hmm. So as the party begin to move back over the tracks they left, racing to save their companion, the day turns to night, night turns to day. The party, I'm imagining, still keeps a very active eye on what is going on around them, watches throughout the night, making sure that a repeat of what has occurred does not happen again. You take the few days of travel back to the road, growing closer and closer to where this all kind of began. As you are cresting the hill that gives you, I guess, the vision over the place where Sven and Lindis had been set upon, you all would spot two riders on horseback off in the distance, more or less circling that area in a clearer manner of trying to investigate or suss out what had occurred, though at this point that general area has been more or less restored to what it had been before Sven and Lindis had set upon it. As you grow closer and closer, it is pretty easily apparent to the party that one of the men mounted on horseback is Camus, his white tuft very distinct on his otherwise bald head. He would pretty quickly spot you all returning. He would probably also pretty quickly spot, I assume, Sven's corpse draped over one of the horses. Let me go ahead and move you all back to this. Is there any sort of approach the party is taking in this, or just kind of riding up without saying much?
I wouldn't be approaching any, it's not like I would suddenly charge towards him or anything, so it would just be whatever pace we're on. Do we recognize anything about the second rider?
Everyone give me a perception check.
19.
21.
13.
Thomas, as you are distracted for obvious reasons, Braynoon and Quinn, you look upon the second rider, and for a moment you almost mistake him for Captain Keurig. It is a dragon kind in armor with dazzling scales, and for a moment you wonder if Camus has enlisted the Green Hood captain and brought him out here in common clothes. But as you get closer, and a bit more skeptical eye analyzes this new individual, Seth, why don't you describe our new individual?
Wait, you mean there was no way?
Okay.
I'll explain it in a minute. I'm sorry.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
Yeah. So you see a dragonborn riding up, very broad-shouldered, thick muscles, covered in shiny mail, a halberd poking up behind his back, a look of unbridled fury initially, before seeing Sven's corpse draped across the horse, turning very quickly into one of denial and grief. And even from the distance, you can hear out the loud, "No!" as the horse begins to gallop even faster.
And as the two parties begin to close in on each other, that is where we will end today's session.